Senator Turner, how are you doing today? Senator Turner?
Oh, yes, I'm fine. How are you?
Great, great, great. Look, thank you very much for coming on to Politics Done Right here in Houston, Texas. I understand you're in Georgia right now with the campaign.
I just left Georgia. I'm actually back in Cleveland, Ohio.
Oh, you are back in Ohio.
Yes.
Okay, well, great. Well, look, let me first tell you, I met you at Netroots Nation 2015, and there was one interesting thing that I remember well at Netroots Nation, and that was after you gave your speech, the person that followed you paused, and they said, "Why do I have to follow Senator Nina Turner?" Do you remember that?
I do remember that. Yes, I do.
Yes, and so luckily I started the show before you got on, so I don't have to say why must I follow Senator Nina Turner. How are you doing today?
Awesome. I'm fine, but it's really great to be with you and glad you have this platform.
Well, absolutely. I'm glad to have you. As you know, we're here in Houston, Texas, and we just started our primaries yesterday, or on Tuesday. I'm sorry, on Tuesday we started our primaries. So
early voting.
Early voting.
You're early voting. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So people, one of the reasons I wanted to get you on early is so that you could talk to people. You know, we're to tell them things like, how comes you switched from supporting Senator Clinton to supporting Bernie? I've never quite got a full response when I saw it. So why don't you tell our audience about that?
Well, you know, I wouldn't call it a switch, and I've been supporting the Senator Sanders, that is, for a number of months now. Let me just say that when I juxtaposition my life story with what Senator Sanders is fighting for, it pretty much was a no-brainer for me. And I know people want to get caught up in a switch because that's how the media has framed it. I don't call it that. I don't consider it that. I call it I was making up my mind along the way. And there's nothing wrong with that. I am under no obligation to support, one person or another. But when it really came time to that heart-soul agreement, it really was Senator Sanders. And just so your listeners, in less than 60 seconds, I grew up in a single-parent household. My parents got married young, and it didn't work out. And my mother died at the young age of 42 years old with her dreams deferred, as Langston Hughes asked about in his poem.
Right.
And for me, being a first-generation college graduate, it meant so much. And my mother never lived to see any of the great things that I've been able to accomplish through public service. But I know because of her spirit and her memory that I continue to fight for those people who do not have a voice. When I really got a chance to study Senator Sanders, and I got to admit that my husband was one of the people who said to me, "Baby, I really think you should listen to him. He has the same righteous indignation that you have about public service and about helping people who are less fortunate." And I did do just that. And when he talks about raising the minimum wage so that people who work 40 hours a week can have a living wage, when he talks about universal health care as a right in this country, and when he talks about the fact that we need to make sure that our young people are not saddled with debt when they graduate from college. Most college students collectively have $1 trillion worth of debt, and that's not right. It's really about our investment. When I started to think about what he wanted to do for this country and my life story, my heart was convicted, and I supported Senator Bernie Sanders, and that is the quick version of that story. And thank you so much for asking and not just going along with the mainstream media narrative. They need to have that kind of tension, and that's why they continue to say the switch.
Now, this is Pacifica Radio, KPFT, Politics Done Right. We only do things here real, my friend. We only do things here real. So the other thing that gets me is, I wrote a piece for Daily Kos a few weeks ago, and it was called "Incrementalism is Dead," meaning that if we continue with incrementalism, the middle class is dead. My question to you, do you agree with that, and do you agree that that is the reason why bold moves need to be made at this point in time?
I absolutely do, and I'm going to go back. I wrote down what you said. I'm going to go back and read your article, but I'm so glad that you wrote that. It is, and this is the example that I like to give. If somebody is suffering, and let's just use starvation, if somebody's hungry, just because I want your listeners to kind of visualize it, and they need help, the last thing they want is somebody to talk to them about incrementalism, that I'm going to do this in an incremental way. I'm going to help you out. They don't want to hear that. People need help. And so to the extent that vast amounts of wealth in this country, even though Americans are very productive, Americans work hard, the working poor, they're called the working poor for a reason. The middle class is barely the middle class in the 21st century. And it's not because people are not working hard, but the system is rigged. And so almost all the new income is going to the top. And the people who consider themselves middle class and the working poor forget about it. And so that is not fair. If you were to ask people, is that fair that people work so hard in this society and they still can't make ends meet? No, it's not fair. And so you need a leader on all levels of government. Don't get me wrong, but you especially need a president of the United States of America who's going to call that kind of stuff out and who will put forth policies that will allow other people, that will give the opportunities for other people to rise and for them to lift their family. So, yes, I agree with you. Incrementalism is dead.
Now, with regards to what I try to tell folks, and before you came on, the blog of the week, the way we do the show here is we have a blog of the week where I read one of the blogs that I write for the week, and get it to the audience. And one of the things that I try to say was it was an attempt to empower people to not just accept the status quo. But the other thing that I spoke about is having looked for everybody to look in the mirror, because that's who's going to make the change. Now,
that's right.
Everybody knows that Bernie Sanders or whomever it is that you think would make the best president cannot do it on their own. Why don't you tell our folks how and what, assuming that you believe Bernie Sanders is the person that best speaks to the needs of the middle class right now, how would you tell people, what else does he need other than getting him elected for him to be able to realize not his dream, but America's dream?
Well, thank you for that question. And certainly Senator Sanders is not running for himself. He's running for America. I want folks to think about, why is it that a senator from Vermont would even dare take on this task? It's not for him. He could have stayed comfortable in the Senate and continued to fight the fight. But no, he knows that in this country, the people of this country, the working poor, of which he's not afraid to say, and the middle class, they need a champion. They need someone that's going to take it to the status quo, that's going to fight against this rigged economy, this rigged political system. We're now under Citizens United. Even before Citizens United, money was so slowly becoming speech, and the Supreme Court just really locked that in under the Citizens United and also the McCutcheon case. But you know what? You are absolutely right. It's not just voting is one phase of this thing. In a representative democracy, we have to continue to be vigilant and we have to be involved, because if we don't, then that change will not come. Change comes from the grassroots, not the grass tops. And if we think about any great movement in this country, we name it. Revolutionary War comes to mind. You know, where the 13 colonies said, and I know your listeners know the history of this country, but they basically said to King George, oh, no, we're not going to take this anymore. It's unfair. You know, what is happening is unfair, and we want to go out on our own. King George didn't just sit back and say, okay, you can go on your own. No, he put up a fight, and we had the Revolutionary War. If it weren't for them, the founders, the people in our country during that time, the 1700s, fighting against the big powers that be, the status quo, we would not be the United States of America. Now, the fact that they were racist and sexist is a whole other story, but the fact that we are the United States of America. If you take the abolition of slavery, we are in Black History Month, we reflect on how far people of African descent have come in this country. But if we did not have our foreparents who were willing to fight against the aggression of slavery, African Americans would not be free. They fought against the status quo. The system said that African Americans were chattel, that they were not intelligent, that they were property. But we fought, against the status quo. We could use women's suffrage, too, as another example. In this country, women couldn't vote, but they fought against the status quo. Our gay, lesbian sisters and brothers in this country now have the right to marry, the 40-hour work week. So I just want your listeners to take any great movement, anything that we enjoy in this country, as a right, and sometimes a privilege in this country, came by way of the sweat, blood, and tears of people who were bold enough to fight against the system. And we need that same spirit to emerge again. And that is what Senator Sanders is talking about, an America that works for everybody, where the people are in control. And that's why he's not taking money from Wall Street. He's taking money. The average donation is $27 by the people, so that when he wins, the only interest group that he has to answer to are the voters, the people of the United States of America.
Now, one of the important things that he said in the debate, and it was quite interesting, if you take X amount of money from all these different interests, specifically, let's say Wall Street, every American citizen has to ask the question, if somebody gives you money, Honestly, and even the average American citizens, we're given, or whomever is given Bernie Sanders money, or given him because they expect something out of him. In this case, a middle class life. What is a corporatocracy asking for when they give you a few $1 million? Now, I want to touch the elephant in the room, my dear friend, and it goes this way, Senator. Bernie Sanders and the black vote, Bernie Sanders and the Latino vote, Bernie Sanders and the Asian vote. I want to hear, because I know everybody knows right now that there's a comfort level between these different demographics with Hillary Clinton. By the way, I promise for all my Democratic friends, for all my Republican friends, this show isn't a show of disparaging anybody whatsoever. However, there's one thing that I want to get across. What is the affinity that some may have towards a Clinton, and is it justified?
Well, it is really about familiarity. It's just being familiar. I mean, Senator Sanders is a senator from Vermont who did not have a national profile before he decided to run for president of the United States. Those are the facts. The secretary has had the advantage of having a national profile from the moment her husband was elected to become the president of the United States of America in the 90s to now. So from her service, as a first lady, to being the senator of New York and to being the secretary of state. So she has that advantage. Now, I'm going to put that right there. I think every voter, no matter who they are, should expect from their elected officials to earn their vote every time that they run. So this is not about what people who are the voters owe the person that's running. It really is what the person who's running owes to the people.
Exactly.
And particularly, if I could just say, to the African American community, because it's been our community that folks are talking about, are the firewall, and people of color, as you just mentioned, are going to vote.
That is actually insulting
for the secretary. People should have to earn our vote. They don't own our vote, and we have no allegiance to anybody in terms of making sure that the things that we care about are taken care of and advocated for and fought for. And so I just want the vote. I want your listeners, no matter if they're Democrat, Republican, or somewhere in between, just to have an open mind and just to know that as citizens of this country and as voters of this country, that the people who are running are obligated to earn their vote. And it's not the other way around. It just makes me sad. It breaks my heart that African Americans are being considered somebody else's firewall.
Right. That's what I said. It pretty much, that's an insulting concept, and that
it is.
A lot of people in the media doesn't see it as an insult. It actually has plantation connotations, and it seems like many people don't want to say that, but it has plantation connotations.
It does. And can I say that I was in South Carolina. I talked to an elder when I visited a church in South Carolina, and she said to me, and she's an older woman, she's in her, she's seasoned, and she said to me that every time she hears that, it makes her think of sharecropping.
Exactly. Well, that's what it is, Senator Turner. That is exactly what it is.
Yes, sir.
Now, before you go, I want to ask you a big favor to take to the campaign, because first of all, one of my biggest pet, I don't want to call it a pet peeve, because it's actually, I've always been fighting for health care.
Okay.
And the senator was asked a question about health care, and because there was a study that came out that said it cost more than, and how many trillions it would have cost, okay? I thought his answer was a bit ineffective, if not, it was truthful, but ineffective.
Okay.
And I think what he needs to do is, first of all, say, the economist who said it would cost that much more is just an economist with a theory. Another economist came out and said it would cost less, but better than both of those economists, what we know for a fact is that every other country in this world that has single payer or some sort of universal payer is much cheaper. So we don't have to ask for theories from economists any longer. We have proof. And I think he needs to be steadfast on that answer, because we have proof. Living real. Senator Turner, please do that for me. I hope to see you at Netroots in Missouri. Missouri, I think it is this year.
Yes.
And so I'm pretty sure you're going to be out there with the whole gang.
I will be there. Yes, I will.
So great. Thank you very much for being on air with us.
Thanks
and
for
you have
having
a
me on
wonderful
the show.
day.
Politics done right. Thank you so much.
Great. Have a great day now.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.